Hello everybody and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well. And today I want to talk a little bit about Dark Phoenix, which I just finished watching. And if you're wondering why didn't I do my vlog video with me traveling the cars and all that other stuff, it's because I found ways in which to find it, allegedly, because I've just been reading all about it, and it just didn't seem like the type of movie that even was worthy of going on an actual trip to the theater. And looks like my thoughts have indeed been confirmed. Now, let me start off by saying, is this the worst X-Men film that I have ever seen? No, there are many people out there, and I respect their opinion, their subjective view that they think this is the worst of the X-Men films. Is it a good X-Men film? No, it's definitely among the bottom 3 X-Men films of all time. And the main reason why is simply because the story just doesn't really work within the context of the entire X-Men franchise. When you go ahead and look to X-Men First Class and everything they set up there, when you go to Days of Future Past, which set up a lot of these really interesting things with the timeline, with time travel, things like that. And then you had Apocalypse, which was just a giant mess of a film. This just seems out of place. This takes place across different eras, because of course it starts in the 1970s, where you have the first things that happened to Jean Grey's character when she was a child, and then it jumps to the 1990s, and all the characters are pretty much the exact same age as they've been since the very beginning, which is also just something that's very confusing, especially since the first of the movies that have come out, over the first original film that came out around 2000 really wouldn't have been that many years after, and yet all of the actors are not nearly close to the age of the respective actors like Sir Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen. But that, of course, all can be forgiven if you understand it within the context of a specific universe. I think my biggest problem with the overall film, though, is the plot. The plot really just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Obviously, this reveal from the trailers, Jean Grey interacts with some secret force in the universe. They never really explain what that force actually is, and then all of a sudden there's this alien group that shows up, and you never really know exactly who this alien group is. Now, from what I've heard from the rumors about how they had to change the ending of this film because it was similar to another one, I'm kind of wondering, were they trying to bring in the Skrulls? Like, was that something that they were trying to do? Because basically the aliens were able to look like human persons. They were able to take the shape and form of various peoples, and so it makes me think, were they trying to go in that direction, and then they decided to kind of just scrap that storyline altogether because they realized, oh, we can't have that because Captain Marvel's already had it? I really don't know. All I can do is speak about what the film actually itself was, and overall the film was a weak film with a very poorly written story. The actors give it their all in the film. The actors do everything they can. At the end of the day, though, and this has nothing to do with my own personal thoughts about the, the really sick, disgusting comments from Sophie Turner and her, refusal to do things in Georgia because of her, inability to understand that a heartbeat is the sign of life. But of course, I've already done my video on that. It has more to do with the fact that she, as an actress, has always been a supporting actress. She has always had that role and has been very good in that role. And in this film, they give her a little bit more of a leading role persona, and they give her a little bit more screen time. And just overall, it's not that necessarily that she's cringeworthy or that she's bad. It's just that she's not powerful enough or compelling enough for us to really care about her character. That's what it really comes down to. I think that if I had to explain this film in the most simplest terms possible, I would say this film is forgettable. This film is one that many people will probably never watch ever again in the history of ever watching film. Even going to one of the worst X-Men films, X-Men Origins Wolverine, that's a film that I think at least a few people, myself included, would probably watch at least one more time just because of how bad it is to the point of it being funny. This film, I wouldn't say is as bad as that film, because that film is so bad that it's funny. This film is just so bland that it's boring. I guess that would be the way. So really depends on how you determine and how you view subjectively whether or not something is good or bad, and just what you think is worst. Do you think some film being bland and confusing is worse, or a film just being really cringeworthy and really just objectively bad to the level of it being funny as being worse? Honestly, I think that's up for debate. But the question that remains is this a film worth watching? And I would say no. I don't think that this is a film worth watching at all. I think this is a film that you could easily skip, and it looks like many people probably will end up skipping. It made $5 million on its opening weekend, and in comparison to some of the other X-Men films that have come out recently, that is indeed much lower than what the other films have been able to bring about, especially when you look to films like Days of Future Past, when you look to that opening weekend, but also even closer to that when you look to a film like Apocalypse, which at the end of the day just was, in my opinion, one of the worst of the X-Men films. I just really did not like X-Men Apocalypse, so I might have to look back on it just to see maybe if there were certain things that I missed, because it really did seem like Dark Phoenix just was out of place. It felt like there should have been a film between There should have been a film between Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix to kind of help explain things, but also the film Dark Phoenix itself should have explained things a little bit more, especially since it's the last one of the franchise. Now, what I gather, what likely is the situation is that Dark Phoenix was already in the process of being worked on by 20th Century Fox before the Fox takeover, and then when it came to the actual promotion and the finishing touches on the film, that's when Disney took over, and so Disney was saying, oh, well, the ending seems a little bit similar to what we already had in another film like Captain Marvel, and again, that's why I kind of asked that question. Are skulls a part of it? I have not really dived in to see exactly what that ending was going to be, because at the end of the day, I don't care about Captain Marvel. I don't care about this film either enough to really look into it that much further, but obviously you can tell that the ending was changed, because the ending is just like, okay, fine, it ends. I mean, no spoiler alert. I mean, this is something that should be pretty obvious at this point, especially since this is the end of the X-Men for at least the next 5 years, at least if we're to believe Kevin Feige, who said that they have no plans for the X-Men to be a part of the MCU, at least for the next 5 years, which I think at the end of this film is a good thing. However, it's also a bad thing, because it means, and really does confirm, at least for me, that certain actors that don't necessarily die in this film are not likely going to be coming back as those characters, even though I think they've done a very good job. But there are characters, of course, that do pass in this film. A couple that are actually some pretty high profile, I would say. Some surprising moves, some surprising choices. But as I said, being the last of the films, and really you could tell this had that last of a franchise type feel to it. It really just barely delivers on that. It really just takes its time, doesn't want to explain things. Certain people end up in certain places and you don't really understand why. And then there's certain relationships that now exist and you don't really understand why either. And it's just, again, it's a giant mess of a narrative. You really felt like you needed to have another film to lead up to it, to help to explain basically this gap between the last film and this film, but also you really just feel like you wish that they had taken a little bit more care and a little bit more time to actually craft a good narrative that's going to actually send this off into the sunset, rather than leave people on a dour and sour note. And that thing's going to leave a lot of people, especially X-Men fans, thinking to themselves, God, man, Dark Phoenix has now once again been a franchise, has been a storyline that they've just not been able to figure out. I know that a lot of people were saying that back during X-Men Last Stand, and it seems like a lot of X-Men fans are saying this about this film, as someone who has not read the comics, but is in the process of watching the animated series, which I hear is one of the best renditions of the Dark Phoenix. Can't wait to actually get there to see what they do with the Dark Phoenix saga. This is not going to be the film for you, because, as I said, many of my friends who are very avid comic readers have said that as much, saying that this does not do it justice, but also, too, I can tell you, just as a general film, just as an objective, subjective level when it comes to this film, it is very, very weak nonetheless. Now, what is this going to do at the box office? Well, a $5 million Thursday is not the worst that it could possibly do, but projections of this domestically are not very high, and that's not surprising to me that they're not very high, because I think even before all of this mess with Sophie Turner coming out, saying her stupid comments, even before all this, the stupid scene that came out with Jennifer Lawrence, which I will say, thank the Lord, is really the only identity politics driven scene in the film, when she just randomly says we should just be called the X-Women. They do kind of set up that in the future there might be, and this is where I think Disney's hand might have been involved, is basically there's this voiceover that happens towards the end of the film saying, oh, we need to do, we're becoming something new. That really does seem to indicate to me that they are going to try and actually, and I really pray to God they don't, that they're really going to try and push an X-people and leave just the X-Men behind, even though men can be an all-inclusive term. When you talk about mankind, it obviously includes men and women, but of course they don't care about that, because it's all about the political messaging of it all. It's just really sad as far as this film is concerned, but domestically, probably not going to do well already, because the trailers for it were already not very good in the first place. Jessica Chastain's character is totally wasted. Jessica Chastain as an actress is totally wasted, and I could say many of these actors in this film that are really talented actors are absolutely wasted in this film as well. As far as overall grade goes, I would give this film a C-. I think that this film is definitely not worth seeing. I would say this film is lazy, and I think that the blame is mostly on the Disney-Fox merger, and about people basically working on the film, at least the writing of the film, thinking to themselves, all right, well, we don't really care as much about creating the best story possible, because this is pretty much the end for us. And on the same time, too, Disney taking over and saying, well, we don't have any plans for them for the next 5 years, and we're going to reboot them anyway, and so why the hell not? Which really is a stupid business practice, because you kind of want your films to do as well as they can weekend. There is a possibility that this film could do well overseas because, as we've seen before in many other cases, sometimes the foreign market does show up to these types of films, these films with the high CGI, with the X-Men name on it. So we'll see if that's going to be enough in order to make this film keep itself from being completely a flop, which is why I'm not going to say or predict that this film is going to flop necessarily overseas. Domestically, I think it's going to be definitely it's already the lowest ranked as far as Rotten Tomatoes, critics ratings, and audience ratings. It's already one of the lowest rated X-Men films there, but as far as box office goes, I could see it being on the lower end domestically without a shadow of a doubt. But when it comes to the foreign numbers, we'll still have to wait and see when those numbers come in. And of course, please stay tuned to the Geeks and Gamers channel when I will be doing coverage of that overall. Anyway, guys, what are y'all's thoughts? Do you think that this film is good? Do you think that this film is worth seeing if you have already seen it? As I said before, I don't even think it's worth going out of your house to go see. And again, allegedly, I did not actually leave my house to go see the movie. Allegedly, and of course, and I would never actually promote that kind of talk because I do think that theaters deserve support because theaters are awesome. But anyway, guys, let me know your own thoughts about this video, about this movie, and also, of course, about the future of the X-Men. Do you think that the MCU is going to do a good job with them? I would say that after this, it seems to me that Disney did have some meddling, especially with the ending of the film. And if the ending that they have in mind for this film and what they're trying to portray and what they might be trying to set up with them in the future over the next 5 years, I don't think it's going to be a good one. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless.